Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Dane from NYYU. We'd like to welcome you to the Yankees Farm Report. We have special guests with us today. Grayson, how are you doing?
Oh, doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
And Greg is back again this week. Carlos, do you want to introduce Grayson a little bit?
Grayson Crawford is the pitching coach for the Somerset Patriots, who had an amazing season pitching wise this season. So congratulations on that.
I appreciate it.
Now, you had just about every high level arm go through your system. That had to have been pretty special this year.
I'm about to say it might have been a bad thing for me if we didn't have a good year because all the guys coming through there were our guys. So, a lot of credit to them. And it was a fun year just to work with all those guys.
Yeah. Lois?
One thing I did want to say is if you could just basically introduce yourself. Otherwise, I know a little bit about your background. I've seen some of your interviews. I've read some of them as well. I know by trade you're a catcher, which is an interesting perspective. I don't think I've ever seen a catcher become a pitching coach, but it makes total sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Catcher in college. Yeah, people always like, well, how did you get to be a pitching coach at that point? Like my thought behind it all was you deal with pitchers every single day. You're learning all these different guys. You're kind of getting to know what makes them go, how to communicate with them, different things like that. So, it's just kind of the fit that I kind of was looking for, I guess. And finished playing and got right into coaching, coached college baseball for 12 years. Decided to jump to the professional side. Once I got the opportunity here with the Yankees, decided it was the right one, and had talked to some other teams before that, and whether it just didn't work out or just wasn't the right timing or whatever. I felt like this was it, and coming to work for Sam Breen is something I felt like was the opportunity I was looking for, and then kind of got my start here and was with Tampa Tarpons last year in Low A, and then obviously in Somerset this year.
Gotcha.
Now, being the pitching coach, is there a standard template you follow for your pitching staff, or as far as development goes, do you try to adhere to what you think their strengths are?
Yeah, no, I think we always leverage their strengths. I think that's one of the things we probably do. I would say as good as any. I don't know what everybody else is doing exactly, but we try to make everything very individualized based upon each guy's strengths, and try to build off of that. And obviously we have a framework of things that we want to try to do, and things that are important to us, and all the guys know that. And so then it's like, how do you get to where we're trying to go? The path might look a little different for everybody, but at the end of the game, it's still about just trying to go get outs and prevent runs.
Mhm. Two of the guys that I did see you, I don't know how much you got to work with Beeter, because I know you came to Somerset this year and late last season, but there was a change in him, because pretty much in for the Dodgers organization, he was just an opener, but he seemed to show starting pitching stuff.
Yeah, no, I had Beeter all through spring training, and a decent amount for the first part of the year. So let's see, he threw 60 innings for me. So I had him for a decent amount of the year. And I think the biggest thing is he wanted to prove to people that he could start, and so that's something that, whether it was the Dodgers philosophy or maybe something they saw differently in him, we felt like he had, the opportunity to start. And, he had three solid pitches, coming into spring training. He had worked on a changeup, and that kind of just continued to get better throughout the year, and really ended up showing probably what it was a little more in AAA than it was in AA. And obviously everybody's kind of always known of the big fastball and then the
Yeah.
slider off of it. And so that's been something that, we're, once again, that was the strength. So we didn't want to get away from all of that. But, like I said, he wanted to kind of show that it was more of a pitcher instead of just a power thrower.
How high did you see Clayton's fastball get up this year, too?
I think we had him up to like 95, 96, somewhere right around in there. And I know he's flashed a little harder than that. I think he maybe got up to a 97, 97 and a half, something like that when he got to Scranton. And so we were working on some mechanical things as well. And, probably one of the biggest things from going from a reliever to a starter sometimes is the mechanical aspects of being able to do it for, 80, 90, 100 pitches as opposed to 20 or 30 pitches. So we were working on some of that early, and, I think you saw some of the benefits of it as the year continued to go, and Graham did a great job with him in Scranton, and obviously now he lands on our 40-man.
That's a great answer. And a follow-up question to that, you mentioned, sort of some maybe mechanical changes to help him get through the 90 plus pitches. In terms of starters and relievers, I've always wondered, what is the difference in terms of, now you mentioned mechanics, but are there other differences in terms of how you prepare each player to become a reliever versus a starter?
Yeah, I think I think if you had asked some of our guys, that probably is the biggest change once you get to AA and AAA from some of the guys coming up. And I was just listening to a different podcast that Chase Hampton was on, and he was just talking a little bit about this, about how, whether it was in college when he was, kind of a swingman starter, reliever, and then learning to be a starter. And when you start seeing hitters 2 and 3, at bats in a game, and learning how to navigate a lineup a little bit, that takes a little bit of learning, I guess is probably a good way to say it. And it's the same with the delivery. You get a guy with a really, high effort delivery that, now all of a sudden he's trying to get into, trying to be 60, 70, 80 pitches. I think you start to try to maximize your body a little bit more. You want to move as efficiently as possible. So I think all of those things kind of differ guy to guy. And, you see some relievers that are super low effort and it just jumps out of their hand. But a lot of times you see a little more high effort delivery with a reliever, and then a starter typically almost looks like he's not trying at times out there. And I think a lot of that is just the body syncing up and kind of moving effortlessly.
Now, if I could bring up somebody that you guys had earlier this year, Will Warren is somebody that I'm very, very high on. And you've talked about how, I've read your interview with him or about him. So why don't you tell us a little bit about his pitch package?
Well, there's not much he doesn't have, I'll tell you that much.
Right.
The guy can manipulate a baseball about as good as anybody I've ever been around. I'm obviously super high on Will. I think he may be, it's questionable we have a lot of really good arms, but he might be the most major league ready arm that we have from a starting pitching perspective in the minor leagues. So it's going to be a really fun year to see what happens with him, this next year. But, I think from a package wise, we added a 4-seam fastball this year. That was something that he had messed around a little bit with in 22, but this year we kind of added that, and he showcased that significantly more than he had in the past. But the 2-seam fastball's kind of always been the bread and butter fastball for him, right? That's kind of his, I know I can throw a strike, and a lot of it is he likes to call it blacking out, just like I'm just going to black out and just beat you here with this 2-seam fastball. The slider is that's the one that makes the headlines on Twitter and all that makes people look silly. That's always been his pitch since he's been with the Yankees, and kind of continues to be. And you see him, the more he starts to learn execution with that pitch. That was kind of the biggest change for him once he got to AAA, was once he started executing that pitch over and over again where he wanted to, you start to see the results started to come, and he started to take off from there. And I think he ended the year like a run and a half better than league average in ERA in AAA. So showcases a curveball some, not a high percentage pitch, but does throw one. Changeup continues to get better, and he continues to throw that, especially to lefties. And then we added the cutter as well, this last year, and that was kind of a primary pitch that he would use early in counts and things like that with lefties. So like I said, he's not really missing much from a pitch package wise. He has about everything, but I think with him, it's not so much adding pitches as much as it was just kind of continuing to learn, like I was saying earlier, how to navigate a lineup, when you're seeing a more advanced hitter 2 and 3 times, and maybe not just being able to go get him out the same way time after time, and what that looks like. And those are the things I think people want to rush. And so sometimes, it takes time. It takes time for guys to understand like how to do that. And that's why I think you saw Will, especially in the last, half of the season or so, like just really take off and kind of go, in that second half in AAA.
He was pretty special
like
those last.
It seemed like he
6 to 8
pared down.
starts.
Yeah, and those last 6 to 8 starts, it seemed based on the pitch data and watching the games that he seemed to actually pare down his repertoire a little bit. Almost seems like in an effort to make sure he's got his command where it needs to be. And is that something that was planned, or was that more of an on the fly? I'm going to use what's working today.
Yeah, I think I think probably one of the benefits of having a lot of pitches is you have a lot of pitches, right? Like some of the negatives can be like, you start getting away from or in between, like, should I throw this? Should I throw that? And so I think it was more about just like you said, kind of like what's working today. And then what is the matchup today? Is the matchup 6 lefties and 3 righties? Is it 7 righties where I can go, heavy 2-seam slider mix? There's a lot of different things that are going to play out based off of what the matchup is today. And, I think some of those things are, when you start to add pitches and you start to kind of build out that repertoire, it's like, all right, like, how do I use it now? And I think Graham did a phenomenal job with him of kind of getting some of those things to, kind of take shape. And, Will's so talented and, he's such a fierce competitor on top of all of these things that, whenever he has like that next obstacle in his way, it's almost like, all right, I'll just continue to prove you wrong. And, people talked about his velocity a little bit coming into spring training, and next thing you know, he's throwing 3 miles per hour harder. And we were kind of like, hey, what'd you do? And he was like, well, I just started throwing harder. And we were like, all right, well, I wish it was that easy for everybody, but
no kidding.
That's just kind of how he goes. And like I said, that's probably as much as anything why I believe the most in him is just continues to knock down barriers that continue to get put in his way.
Going back to just Somerset real quick, when you have a pitcher who has an outing that day, is there and there's a specific hitter, let's say a Jackson Holliday in the lineup, do you attack him any differently? Because as we know, minor league baseball is basically for development. So is there a specific attack plan for that pitcher, or the pitcher still has to go out there and execute the pitches that he was meant to execute that day?
Yeah, I think I'll kind of work backwards from that question. I think the minor league development side of things, as you continue to increase levels, at least in our system, the game planning becomes a little bit more of a piece. From AAA. It's obviously we want it to treat that as same as if you were pitching in a big league game. Right. Sure, there's some development that might still be going on, but we want to try to push the game planning side of stuff as much as possible. I would say in AA, we still do a vast majority of this, and this would be kind of where I was talking earlier about the individual. Like, right, some guys are ready for more, and some guys maybe aren't quite ready for as much. So their game planning is maybe dumbed down a little bit to where there's a strict focus on, hey, we want to throw, a certain amount of these pitches. So we want to make sure we get them in. So maybe here's the guys that we can throw them against. But then there's some guys that, we're going to go through the 9-man, lineup, and we're going to talk about it as if you were trying to go out and win Game 7 of the World Series, because that's the most important thing right in front of you here. So, I think it depends, but Jackson Holliday, man, that guy can really hit. But, so we're talking about like, all right, like how are we going to handle him? If you're a starter, especially, like we'll go through, some stuff. They have access to a lot of different information themselves that they can kind of prep themselves with. I try to encourage them to either look up on it, or we have a reliever meeting before every series. And so some of the starters will kind of sit in on that, because we'll highlight, 3 or 4 right-handers, 3 or 4 left-handers, and just kind of see like who we think are kind of like the highlight guys for the relievers. And then some of the starters will sit in on that because they know like, hey, this is probably the guys I need to focus on most. And so sometimes they'll sit in on that, but they'll come to their bullpen that week, and we may talk a little bit about it. That's probably the biggest difference. Whereas as you continue to progress, especially, on the big league side, there's probably some game planning stuff that goes along with the the bullpens, whereas for us, a lot of our bullpen time is spent more on development, whether it's a certain pitch or locations or whatever, but we may mix a little bit of that in. And then we have a pregame meeting. Yeah. And so that pregame meeting will definitely be geared around, from the AA, AAA level especially, will be geared around, how are we going to get these guys out? What are the game plans, for these guys? And then how does that match up with their strengths? Because not everybody can go do the same thing, right? Like the curveball might be the best option, but if the curveball, either you don't throw it or that's your, fifth or sixth best pitch, then maybe that's not the best pitch in that situation. So maybe we just have to figure out, like, hey, what is going to be your game plan in order to get this guy out? And I will say this too, like our catchers have a very big piece and role in that meeting as well. So the catchers will come to that meeting prepared, and each catcher is a little bit different. Whether it's Austin Wells or Ben Rice or Carlos Narvaez. Like, I mean, there's a ton of different guys.
You guys got some good catchers.
Yeah, right. Like Augustine Ramirez. Like, I mean, so there's a bunch of different guys there that. Same with the pitchers, right? Like their understanding and their learning of game planning, all those guys aren't the same. Narvi's going to come in with a full notebook, and he's going to be, that's something he's just always been very good on. And, whereas like, some other guys that might be something they've never done. So maybe they're having to learn a little bit about what that looks like for them also.
You just named about 4 of our favorite catchers that we've talked about a lot. Love all those guys. Anyway, I got to run. I got to go in for a shift, but I just want to say thank you for coming on, and let Dayne and Carlos handle it from here. And
thanks, Greg.
Perfect, man.
Look forward to seeing the rest of this interview.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
All right,
thanks, Greg.
While you're still on there, I did want to shine a light on them, because I've been big all season on like Danny Watson and Jack Neely. I really love what these guys are doing, and have high hopes for them.
Yeah, man. Obviously, I had both of those guys last year, in Tampa, and then by the time they got to Somerset this year, at different times. But, Danny, I'll start with him. Like, he was one that, kind of had some stumbles last year in Tampa. It was an up and down year, and, really had to work through some things. And then to see, that guy end up on the 30, top 30 prospects, by the end of the year, man, it's just it's a really cool story. It's a testament to how much hard work he's really put in. And, we asked him to do some things last year that might be a little bit unconventional for a lower, sidearm type delivery. And, we felt like, and some of our analysts felt like, that was going to be what was best for him. And, it's really worked. And, he's continued to buy into what we're wanting to do. And then he added the cutter, and that was kind of the difference maker for him, because that leveled the playing field for righties and lefties. And he was dominant. He had that stretch there, and I think he had the lowest ERA in all minor league baseball with any pitcher over 60 innings this year.
He was absolutely filthy.
I mean, he had an outstanding year. And then Jack didn't get there till a little bit later, but that was a guy. I think everybody probably saw my thoughts on Jack, but it was, the biggest game of the year in the playoffs, and we needed to go get, 4 outs. And, that's who I gave the ball to, because I felt like, he was the guy that could go get it done. And he just continues to strike out guys at a high clip. And you want to talk about a slider that was just devastating this year to watch, over and over and over again. And
yeah, that was a good pitch.
Guys that are just knowing it's coming and they still don't hit it. And then all of a sudden, here comes 95 or 6 when you're not looking for that. So, I think both of those 2 guys out of our bullpen, man, I don't know, would be anxious to see where they, how they come back to spring training and where they start at. But, definitely high hopes for both of them this next year.
We're looking forward to seeing them as they come up.
Yeah, Fernanda, absolutely. He has closer stuff absolutely filthy. I remember he threw a couple games this season where he faced 7 batters and struck all 7 out.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I think, he's another one. Like, if you look at his kind of history coming out of college and, into professional baseball, it's just like each year just continues to be a significant increase in improvement and execution. And so he can just continue that trend, man. And like I said, it's going to be fun to watch.
Another guy that really stood out to me all year, just because of the consistency, was Richard Fitz. You had him the entire year. That pitch package is it looks pretty ready for the MLB. How far away do you see him?
I think the thing about Fitzy is he's a little different, than some of the others that we've talked about. It's not a 5 or 6 different pitches. It's more of like the traditional fastball, slider, changeup, and here it is. And I think what about Fitz is he's going to throw strikes. That's never going to be a question. Elite strike thrower, not going to beat himself. The fastball is going to continue to play. He continues to throw harder and harder. We saw flashes this year up to, I think it was right under 98 miles an hour, like 97.9, 97.8, something like that. So elite velocity, especially as a starter. Now just like getting him to be able to hold that velocity a little longer is something that hopefully we see this next year. But I think the difference maker for him this year was the slider just kind of continued to get better and better from about the middle of July through the end of the year. I think he had like almost a 40% miss rate on the slider.
Wow.
And so it was significant improvement. That was kind of the thing everybody wanted to see is, can he throw a breaking ball and get elite miss? And, I think he was able to kind of start to do that. And then you saw him in the playoff game, and that lineup with Binghamton was loaded with prospects as well, with Gilbert and Acuna, and, you could just keep going with guys in there, Jackson. And, I thought the first 3 batters of the game, like good morning, good afternoon, good night, and just strikes all 3 out and sets the tone, and made one bad pitch on a fastball and guy hit a solo homer. And, that's kind of always going to be who he is. He's going to give up a solo homer here or there because he throws so many fastballs that, a guy's going to get one every now and then. Like that's just going to be what it is. We kind of talk a lot about the solo homer doesn't necessarily get you beat. A lot of games you can give up the one solo homer and so what, as a starting pitcher, you kind of saw it with the number of quality starts that he had, like, where he gives up 1 or 2 runs and you get 6 2/3. Like, you talking about a guy that saves a bullpen and helps with things like that. Like, I don't know what his path's going to be. Those are for people that are in higher spots than me and who, get to make those decisions. But I'll tell you this, like, I definitely think that, he's definitely ready and earning people's attention, every time he goes out there. And so looking forward to what's next for Richard for sure.
Yeah, for Fitz, from the games that I've watched for him, he just keeps coming. He keeps coming at you. He's like a bulldog.
Yep.
I don't think there's anything flashy about him, but he's just like, here it is, hit it. Here it is, try and hit it. And like Dayne was saying, he'll go 5-6 innings plus almost every night out there. Fantastic season from him.
Yeah, 158 innings in minor league baseball is, pretty unheard of, and for him just kind of to, like you said, he just keeps coming, kind of just been a workhorse, super diligent worker in between starts. Preparation is, important to him, but you talking a guy that like leverages strengths, like he knows, like, all right, like if I'm going to get beat, I'm going to get beat doing what I do really well. And if you get me, you may get me that time or that at bat, but like I'm not going to get myself in trouble or beat myself. And I think that kind of showed with the consistency throughout the whole season.
Now, you guys got somebody middle of the year that was kind of came out of nowhere and chased Hampton. He 8th round pick. No one really knew what to expect. He ends up in Hudson Valley to start the year. And then I think 9 starts in the year, he gets bumped up to Double-A. How exciting was that for you guys to get him?
Man, it was great. Chase, obviously our number 4 overall prospect now, in some rankings and top pitching prospect. And, I think the thing about Chase is, like you said, he kind of came out of nowhere, I think, on the grand scheme of things, but starting in spring training, he didn't really slip up on anybody inside of our org. We saw it coming, like, from his very first outing in camp before spring training started, kind of on, like, you just knew, like, man, that guy's different. He's kind of sticking out with some of our better arms here. And then he just kind of kept going. I think you may have saw at the very end of the year, maybe got a little bit tired. But that's expected, right? Like it's a first major or, first professional season. And, so I think that's something that he'll continue to get a little bit better at. And I think coming to AA was a good adjustment for him too, because then it was learning, like I said earlier, how to navigate a lineup, how to face guys 2 or 3 times, another guy with a big pitch package. And so trying to understand, like, all right, now I got to, forcing fastball, curveball, slider, cutter, change a little bit. That's something that we're kind of working on adding a little bit. So now it's like, man, I'm throwing 5 pitches. So like, how do I navigate this? And, he's kind of always been a power strikeout type guy. And, that's something that there's something to be said about a guy that can go out there and just, in a tough situation, man, I need a big strikeout, like, and I can go get it, and he's got probably as good as anybody we've talked about, that ability to just go get that punch out when he needs it. And so, man, like I said, it was a great year for him. But I would be definitely, not saying the truth if I didn't say we're expecting even bigger things as we move forward, because I think the sky's the limit for his potential for sure.
Yeah, we talk about him quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And
for me, he's my favorite pitching prospect in the system. And like I was telling Dayne in our last episode, he still has something left in the tank. He ran out of gas a little bit towards the end of the season. I think what was his previous college year? It was like 60 something innings, something like that.
66.
So I know he was gassed, and this season, when he got to Somerset, he had to learn to pitch a little bit more instead of just relying on that big fastball. So I'm very excited and very optimistic about what he does next season.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you saw it at the end of his time in Somerset, right? Like his some of his outings right there at the end, the last couple of games, and I can think about the last 2 really at Reading and at Hartford. You really started to see some of the things that we wanted to see. And we talk a lot, like I've been saying, about navigating a lineup, and you started to see him learn how to get through some of those things. And you don't want to lose the strikeout mentality, like, right? That's a big part of who he is. But at the same time, like, if we can minimize some of the pitch counts and minimize some of the things, now all of a sudden we were talking about Fitz going deeper in games, like you're going to start to see Chase get into that 5th, 6th, 7th inning, every single time he takes the ball.
Now, jumping to another player, you got Chase's roommate last year and Drew Thorpe that came up a little bit later in the year. And he was somebody who, right when he got to AA, just kind of exploded on the scene with those 3 outings that were pretty impressive. What did you see from him?
I never seen anything like that. I'll tell you that much. Like, he just came in and it was just like, man, I thought AA was supposed to be hard. Like, he didn't say that because he doesn't talk. We kind of call him like he's like the silent assassin. Like, he just smiles every now and then and just keeps going. Like, yeah. So it's I think what you don't see under the hood a little bit is, man, he's as fierce of a competitor as maybe anybody that we have in our system. And it's not only like against somebody else, it's also like an internal, competitive thing too, to where, if he throws a bad pitch, even like not even a bad result on a hitter, but just a bad pitch, like, I mean, you can just, as you start to know him, you can just see it, like, just, man, it just drives him insane that, man, like, how did I not execute that one pitch, and so yeah. I think his thought process and his self standards are super high for himself. I think everybody got to see how good the changeup really is. The changeup is obviously the bread and butter. But the other thing is there's 4 other really solid pitches that are in there also that, the changeup just kind of over dominates. And so people always talk about it. But I think what helps it is, you kind of start leaning on the changeup, and then you get the gyro slider, or then you get the sweeper, or the fastball command is pretty elite. If I want to throw it, down and away or up and in or whatever that is. And while the velocity may not like right up the radar gun, like maybe some of these other guys we've talked about, like, it's been solid. Like, the velocity's been very solid, and you kind of started to see that when he got to Somerset, kind of continue to climb. So he'll be another one, like year 2, like, kind of gets that first year under his belt, understands what that professional baseball workload looks like. And, I think you'll see the velocity continue to climb a little bit. And, I think you're going to see that, the cutter, the slider, and then, the bigger sweeper, I think you're going to start to see just how good those pitchers really are. And, the dominance, like I said, the dominance he had in his short time in Somerset was, it was truly remarkable, because there was never a moment where it was like, these guys have a chance. Like, I mean, it was like, I've never seen anything to where it was just like, man, 3 or 4 games in a row of just like, they didn't have a chance. Like it was that dominant, and it was like, man. And then, obviously had the little non-throwing, shoulder deal. And I mean, that was probably one of the, if not the biggest losses, that we had going into the playoffs was he was kind of slotted. He was going to throw game 1. And so, we end up shutting Chase down and you lose him. And then it was like, man, like that hurts a little bit, from a playoff perspective. But obviously, everybody plays the playoffs in AA and AAA a little bit different. But our goal is to let these guys help us in the Bronx. And so we had to do what was best for their future. And, that's just the way we had to continue to look at it.
For me, watching real quick, but for me watching Drew at Hudson Valley, I just thought he was completely overmatched, and I thought it was like big fish in a little pond type of situation. But he gets to Somerset, and he's pretty much he's even better now, and it was just amazing to watch. Absolutely amazing to watch.
Yeah, I think I don't know if he would say this, but just by kind of looking at his last few outings in Hudson Valley, it was almost like he got bored, like it was too easy for him. And then he got to Somerset, and it was like, let me lock it back in and let me prove to these people just, what I can do. And, like I said, he would never say any of that strictly because I'm telling y'all, if you get him to talk, you're doing good. But he just, it was unbelievable, what he did. And, I mean, I think all the praise and all the things he got, like if you saw that in person, it was every bit of it was warranted.
I watched that 6.2 inning 12 strikeout game that he had, his second start in AA. I watched that from the beginning to the end, and he was just so dominant. It was unbelievable.
Man, I'm telling you, it was like nothing I'd ever seen.
No one had a chance. But anyway, I wanted to ask you about Yoendrys Gomes. You had him early in the year. We saw him make his way up to the major leagues this year. What do you see as his future? What's he working on to get back to being healthy? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I think Yogo, I think the biggest thing with him was like trying to build a routine that was going to continue to keep him healthy, and so I think that was something that we did this year. And, I know there was a lot of people at times that were, frustrated with how slow we kind of built him because we crawled, we didn't get in a hurry. But that was on purpose. We knew that we needed to take our time and continue to build him up the correct way. And, I think the pitch package is there to be a frontline starter. He's got it all. He has a fastball that plays to both hands. He's got a slider and a curveball, so you can play that to both hands. The changeup's good. He added the cutter, so it's another 5-pitch guy that, as you saw in his debut, that literally can stand there and tell you the fastball's coming and still gets missed. Those guys continue to swing underneath the fastball over and over in that game with the Blue Jays. And those were not some bad hitters that he was facing either, with Vladdy and some of those guys. Like, I mean, he went through the meat of their lineup right there. And so I think for him, sure, the fallback plan could be a bullpen, but we have all the hopes in the world that he's gonna be in our starting rotation, and so I know he pitched in the bullpen in his debut, but I still think our plan is at this point is to have him in our starting rotation and continue to work towards that and use this off season to build him up again after not a full season, but a fairly long season. I would say, I don't have it in front of me, but I would say that's probably the longest season he's had in quite some time now. And so I think now that he's done that, now that he's built that routine, continue to work on some of the mechanical stuff that he was working on throughout the year. And, I think you saw with him too, like started to get deeper in games, started to, pound the zone a lot more as the season continued to move on. And like I said, I think for him, it's strictly just continuing to go out there and just take the ball and leverage his strengths.
Now, you had a guy that piggybacked with him that was really pretty special to begin the year, and Edgar Barclay. Left-hand kid, doesn't have much velocity on the fastball, but he gets a lot of strikeouts, limits traffic on the bases. I mean, he looked pretty good all year.
Yeah, no, Eddie was great for us, for sure, especially in that role behind Yogo. And, another guy with a kind of a deadly changeup. The changeup's kind of always been his weapon as well, but kind of reworked his fastball a little bit this last offseason. Kind of created some more ride on the fastball, and that's where you started to see some of the misses there. When he pitched in shorter stints, the velo was a little bit better. When he got spread out into longer stints and starter, I think some of the velo came down a little bit, but he still continued to get some miss there. So yeah, he's going to be another one that, it's going to be interesting to see, with him, like exactly how we decide to play that and what role exactly, he goes into. But I think that's a benefit for him. You can slot into a lot of different things. You can spot start here. You can, be a rotation guy. You can pitch as a piggyback, or you can just come out of the bullpen and be a left-handed guy out of the pen. So, I think he kind of fills all of those roles. And with any of these guys, we tell them all the time that, their best ability is availability. And he's one of those guys that he's constantly available in whatever role that's needed. And I definitely think that's a strength for him moving forward.
Los?
At Hudson Valley, who do you feel could be next, or that you could help take to the next level?
Yeah, I think Zach Messenger came up at the end of the year. He was a guy that kind of some of the, I guess, win-loss record type stuff doesn't always look is good for him. But if you look at some of his underlying numbers for the last 2 years, they've been really good. And so I think he's another guy that is we think highly of. Had a good outing in New Hampshire right there at the end of the year, and then honestly pitched pretty solid in the playoffs as well. And when he came in, in that role, Brock Selvidge kind of busted on the scene a little bit there in Hudson Valley this year. And I worked with him a little bit 2 spring trainings ago, so I haven't honestly been with him very much at all. So I know they added the cutter with him a little bit, and that was a big deal, and started working a little more on the changeup. And so, hard throwing left-hander that can pitch in the rotation, you got to be excited about that. And then, Brendan Beck was another one who kind of a short stint, but in his, time in Hudson Valley, looked like the numbers were good. I would kind of put him more in that fits category, to where it's more of, I'm just going to get in the zone. I'm not going to beat myself. And, I'm just going to keep coming and take the ball time after time again and continue to do that. And that's what it looked like. And, then there was a few other guys right there at the end that, out of their bullpen that threw the ball well. And Luis Velasquez, had a great year in Hudson Valley. He was another kind of, power arm out of the pen. And, I worked with him in the off season and last year, and then this year a little bit as well. And so that one's a fun one to work with for sure. And, Pastana is another one there that, short stint, but had some good stuff. I think he struck out 16 or 17 in 8 or 9 innings or something like that. And so, I know in spring training, I got to see him a little bit, just the way it shaped out. And that's a pretty special arm also that, just got to kind of continue to, big fastball, breaking ball's good, just kind of continued to get him going. And so there's some exciting arms there. I think, between that early Tampa period and those guys that came up, and, Preston Claiborne did a great job with those guys last year. And, some of their numbers definitely speak of that. And, I think some of those guys I just named, and I didn't even talk about Justin Lange. He's another one, big fastball that, continues to learn the zone a little bit more. And, I think he showed definite improvements there this year. And, you can't deny that fastball. That's about as good of a fastball as anybody we got velocity wise. So, he's another one that'll be exciting as we continue to move forward with.
Now, Luis Gil has been out all year with Tommy John's. Have you seen him since he's been rehabbing?
I haven't personally seen him. I know that he pitched a rehab outing or two. So was definitely moving forward pretty well. But honestly, outside of that, other than when he pitched a few outings, that was about all that I knew. But I do know, like I said, I do know he threw a few outings there, and seemed to be things were moving pretty good.
So he'll be spring training. He should be back.
Yeah, I would think that's the hope. I would think that's the hope is, a lot of those guys that kind of missed the season this year. And I'm not in the loop completely on all those guys. But I know that it seems like a lot of them are progressing in the right direction for sure.
Sure.
Hey guys, this is Greg. I'm back on the phone here. I'm on my drive in, but I had a quick question. You mentioned Justin Lange. He's one of my favorite guys. I do have an interesting question for you though. So when you have a guy like Justin who has some command issues, what do you guys do to work with them to improve that command?
Yeah, I think I think there's a lot of different things. Something that we don't want to do is make the stuff worse to try to throw strikes. That's not the way to go about it. We know like their elite stuff is ultimately what makes them, who they are. And so, I think a lot of it is, just different kind of training aspects that we can go through. Whether it's, building a package that has them and lets them understand a little more about what do they throw for a strike, most. And sometimes they don't necessarily, and this is all pitchers, like sometimes they don't necessarily even know, like, what are my strike percentages on different pitches and like, what does that look like? So when should I use them and how should I leverage counts in order to throw a pitch that I might get a swing and miss on, but I don't throw it in the zone? And then when should I throw a pitch that I know I'm going to throw it in the zone? And, from a philosophy standpoint, we want to win in the zone and attack the zone as much as possible. So I think continuing to, help them understand like what their package is, what their like underlying numbers are, using different targeting, that we can use and different training aspects. And, I think that's probably the biggest way. And I think we've shown a pretty good, track record with some of these guys that do throw hard and getting them and narrowing their misses. That's probably as big as anything, is not necessarily just that one pitch, but it's kind of like bringing the average closer and shrinking the miss distance is probably as much as anything, and trying to draw it back towards the plate. And, I think when you start getting that mindset of winning in the zone instead of like trying to go get a chase out of zone or trying to always just go get a miss somewhere else, like, and just winning in the zone, it naturally helps with that.
Outstanding. Carlos, do you have anything else?
Just I think one of the last questions I have is there anyone like in the FCL or at Tampa that you're paying close attention to that has caught your eye?
Oh man, that FCL pitching staff looked pretty good.
Yeah, it does.
Say the name.
Yeah. Man, to say that I've been paying close attention to, I don't know that I can say that, just because I know we get busy, so it's a little hard to pay attention to that. But whether it's and I'm going to leave somebody out, and so this isn't going to be fair, but obviously everybody knows.
You want me to help? You want me to help you out?
Well, they call them the Twin Towers, Lagrange and Lalane. So you got both of those two, and but then there were a lot of others too, though, right? Like that had really good years. And I was trying to cheat here and pull it up on my computer, but I didn't get it up fast enough to pull it up. But man, like I said, they there's some really good arms down there that, that had some really good years, and, definitely looking forward to, to seeing those guys. And I got to go down last year to the DR and spend a little bit of time there for 10 days during, this time of year. And
oh, wow.
there's some arms down there also that aren't even here yet that, I know that we're excited about and, looking forward to. And, that's where I got to see, I got to see, Carlos and Lalane and Jordarlin Mendoza and some of those guys last year down there, and spend some time with those guys. And that was an awesome experience, and kind of getting to work with some of those guys a little bit. And then to see some of the years they had this year, like the future's definitely bright. And, I think,
absolutely,
we continue to just try to build a powerhouse to ultimately try to continue to impact our big league team the best we can.
I mean, I think you've been in the organization for what, almost 2 years, right?
Yeah, right at 2 years in December. Yep.
So, I mean, we have seen like almost like a philosophy change in the way that the Yankees go about drafting pitchers, signing IFA guys, and I've been saying this all year long. Like, this is the best group of pitching prospects that I have seen in the Yankee organization ever. Just from top to bottom, like you said, from DSL all the way to Scranton. What do you think the change has been in the philosophy as far as going after these kind of guys?
Well, the first thing everybody needs to know is just how good Sam Breen really is. I don't know that. I think people give him credit, but it's never enough. Whenever I chose to come here, he was one of the biggest reasons with that. And, that guy is as good of a pitching mind as anybody I've ever been around in the whole world. And on top of that, he just continues to get better, which I think ultimately continues to push all of us to get better as well. And, and so, like I said, anything outside of Sam Breen, and without talking about him first, we're mistaken. But I think then the collaboration that he's had, and then all of us have then in return had with, our scouting department, to kind of try to really just create a buy-in. And, Scott Lovecamp is kind of the person that signs off on all of the amateur pitchers. And I think he has become a very big part of our pitching department as well. And so that's helped to ultimately really just unify all of us together, and, ultimately all try to pull the rope in the same direction, which is ultimately, we want to create above average big leaguers to help, in the Bronx. And so that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're trying to build. And, I think sometimes people forget, like, you can impact the Bronx sometimes without them even being there, whether that's, a trade piece or whatever. I know even in my time here, like, we've traded away a lot of really good arms that ultimately were, done to try to help our team in the Bronx. And, in player development, I think that's sometimes we always want to see our guys there. We want to keep our guys and do whatever. But, sometimes there's things that we got to do, and there's pieces we got to make. And ultimately our job is just to continue to give them options. And so whether that's impacting the big league team with our guys or helping us get somebody else, as long as we continue to do that, I think we're impacting our big league team. And we continue to do that, and we'll put it in Cash's hands, and he'll take care of it from there. So I think that's ultimately the best thing we can do.
So what are we going to see next from you?
Man, I don't know. I don't know. I guess we'll continue to see where it goes. And, I think ultimately long term, hopefully, eventually would like to be in a major league dugout somewhere, and, helping a pitching staff, whether that's here or somewhere else, But right now, I mean, my feet are in Somerset, or, and that's the job that I have. And so I want to just continue to impact these guys and continue to help them, grow. And, I mean, like you said earlier, like the amount of pitching prospects I get to deal with on a daily basis is pretty special, and definitely something I don't take for granted. So, definitely want to just keep putting my best foot forward to try to help those guys any way I can.
Well, you did a heck of a job this year.
One more question.
Oh, sorry.
One more question. Put you on the spot a little bit here, but if you could give us one pick to click for next year, guy you think could be the next Will Warren, Chase Hampton, or Drew Thorpe, kind of come out of nowhere and show everybody what they can do next year.
Well, you're saying pick to click here, so it can't be
looking for a breakout.
Our rules for pick to click is they can't already be a prospect. So that was always our internal rules, for that. So, man,
well, I got a feeling like I know who he wants him to say.
I mean, honestly, I think we've talked about a lot of them, and I know he's technically on a prospect list and been pitching, but I think Zach Messenger could be a guy, honestly, that kind of comes on and I know he's been in a starting rotation, and I don't know that he's really slipping up on anybody, but I definitely think he's a guy that I know internally we still have a lot of hope for, and definitely still believe that there's a lot of upside there that's kind of untapped a little bit. And so, for us, that's probably one. I think another guy that I know he's been in AAA, but, Mitch Spence had a heck of a year, and he's another one that might not get talked about quite as much. And he had an outstanding year, and, hopefully kind of continues to impact us, as well. And I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think that's probably, I mean, Brendan Beck would be a fun one to say it. Like I said, if he can,
he's one of my favorites. I didn't want to talk your ear off about him, but he's one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah, I think I think he could definitely be one, and I feel like he's a hard pick to click though, because he's a super high round draft pick. So I mean, I think we expect him to be good, but I definitely think he's one that could click. So what do y'all got? Y'all got somebody?
Beck is my guy who I had to pick. So
my breakout was Brock Selvidge. I think Greg was looking at Jackson Fristoe.
Okay.
Yeah, Fristoe's my kind of under the radar guy who he really picked it up at the end of the year. Saw that velo increase, and I have a feeling he's going to break out next year.
And I've seen Fristoe pitch since he was in 8th grade. So I've seen him pitch a really long time. When I was coaching college ball, I'd have to ask him. I know I was at least his second, maybe his first college offer when he was in high school. So I've been seeing him pitch for a really long time. So I love Jackson. I think everybody sees the stuff, so now he really started turning on right there at the end of the year and we're taking off. So that could be a good pick to click. That's for sure. So Tristan Vrieling had a decent year in the fall league. I didn't I know just getting to Vrieling, sorry. Getting to see him throw out there, and he's another one that, just kind of got overshadowed by Hampton and Thorpe and some of those guys. And he's going to be another one that I think busts on the scene a little bit more. And I think people got to see it a little bit in the fall league, but he'll be another one.
He looked pretty good in the Arizona fall league.
Yeah.
And I'm in Washington, and he went to Gonzaga, I believe.
Yep. That's right.
I got to hear a lot about him up here, and they were really high up here in the scouting community on him coming out of school. So I look forward to seeing him more.
Yeah, he's a good one. And then hopefully there'll be some in this class right here that we just got in. So that's the goal, kind of continue to impact those. And, whether it's, Kyle Carr, the lefty, or whether it's, Cade Smith from Mississippi State, or Nicholas Judice, or whoever. There's a lot of options there in that draft class this year. So hopefully some of those continue to impact like this year's did.
Danny Flatt Jr., have you seen him?
I haven't. I have not, but funny story about him is he was committed to Lipscomb, which is where I came from.
Right.
And so whenever we drafted him, they called me and we were like, hey, and I was like, I mean, I didn't have anything to do with it. I'm in Somerset, New Jersey. I'm not in the draft room.
Right.
So but no, I haven't seen him, but heard some good things about him also.
Spin rates are really good on his off-speed pitches.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. Interesting to see. Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. We'd love to absolutely have you back. I think we're going to be in Somerset next year around August, so maybe we can stop by and say hi.
Perfect. Yeah, no, you guys are in town. Definitely give me a shout. And like I said, I'll be glad to do it again.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Y'all have a good one.
Thanks.
All right.
Yep.
Later,
Thanks.
Bye.